G'day, guys. Welcome to this week's Hash It Out. Obviously, this, as you can see, we have the two usual suspects in Joe and Noah, and a new guest today. We have QX. Welcome, gentlemen.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
Pleasure.
As always, crypto's there's never a dull moment in crypto. So this week's no exception. We've just seen SBF get announced that he's been arrested for obviously everything that's sort of the fallout going on in regards to FTX, but also talking along those lines, centralized exchanges and their proof of liquidity and things like that. Maybe could be the subject for today's Hash It Out.
Yeah, it's a good topic to discuss.
Yeah, is there some new news about Binance reserves that I haven't heard about or something? What's the latest on that? I'm out of the loop.
Yeah, so just in regards to the proof of reserves and all that sort of stuff, we all know that's sort of trending around the industry, and a number of centralized exchanges have basically been audited and announced their proof of reserve. What Binance has actually done is proposed somewhat of an audit, but it's on their terms. So the auditor has agreed to sort of inspect everything in their own or in the way that Binance's want to interpret things. So can that be interpreted as an independent audit?
Well,
no.
It's funny. It's funny that they don't disclose liabilities, right? And like as a human, if I went to go get audited and they were like, oh yeah, here's your reserves. First question is, what is your liability? Now, one thing you have to understand is these are businesses that sell products with extreme leverage, right? Like, oh, we're going to 100x short something. And when that goes the wrong way, look at what Sam managed to do with Alameda, right? He basically had a system set up to where he, was free from liquidation. So, essentially in leverage trading, he made himself invincible. And then the asshole went and fell off the map. And just, fell and lost billions and billions of dollars and, never actually could liquidate it, or, it was just like a hole. How do you get $10 billion hole, right? So if you're looking at the liability side, when you have that extreme leverage, the only English word I have is insanity.
Yeah, exactly right. Because especially in FTX's situation where they've got the trading platform, they've got the hedge fund, basically like the money pit to be able to sort of execute all these leverages, which was excluded from being liquidated in its own right. And they still fucked up. So I don't know, like it's insane.
It's pretty bad.
So with Binance, basically they're showing you their hand of cards, but only half of it, essentially.
Well, we don't know what. Yeah, exactly. We don't know the whole terms and things like that of what they've actually agreed to disclose themselves. But hopefully, it's a lot more than that, just to instill a little bit more trust in the industry as well. Because ultimately, I just read recently that in total volume of the entire crypto industry, they trade 75% of daily volume, which is huge amounts of money.
Yeah, fuck. Could you imagine if Binance went down?
Did I read somewhere that this was going on for 3 or 4 years as well, with that supposed audit?
There's been a lot of supposed audits in this industry that never quite come to fruition or mean much. Even Tether, we haven't really seen like a practical audit that I think anybody in any standard form of business would accept, right? And when you get into the exchange and you look at the leveraged products, right? They're not delta neutral, right? They're not just like a counterparty that's they have to have exposure with that type of leverage. Who would take the other side of trades there? So there's a lot of, I'm just going to say, potential attack vectors. Like, how could I handle that as an exchange if I wanted to set up, Armenio's exchange and just, spoil everybody's fun? The first thing I would look to do is rehypothecate assets, where things come in and then I have the ability to artificially kind of create paper assets, because everything in an exchange is happening in one wallet, right? Like from a engineering perspective, your exchange has one wallet, and then you have a variety of sub addresses and kind of a data sheet with user information and these sub wallets. And so it's very hard to actually see what's happening inside of an exchange. You can't. You can, once something is out and it's on chain, that an asset exists, right? But when you are in that type of environment, there is a potential to create artificial paper assets to where you're trading 10 Bitcoins, even though 3 exist. And as so long as you can cover the exit, it's really impossible to know what's happening. And
so
then
guys, how does Ergo in the future protect ourselves from that? When, I know now we kind of luck out where those kind of interacting with those kind of things are a little beyond the budget as far as that goes. But how in the future does Ergo protect itself from that?
The best thing we can do, number one, is keep as much on chain as possible. And that's where I think that decentralized exchanges outperform. The second is we have to be very, very clear in terms of what partners we're going to work with, right? Like there's a mindset in the industry like, oh, you just need to start a project, and then usually what I guess the standard operation is you pay these little, let's say, kind of out in the boondocks exchanges, right?
They'll list anything.
Yeah, they'll pretty much list anything, right? The barrier of entry is just money. And then you try to get some kind of trading volume. And then you go to let's say a slightly larger exchange and say, hey, look, I have this trading volume. Can I pay you too? And, if you can cover the cost of listing, you'll get a little bit more in terms of trading volume. And you kind of try to work your way up, or you just go to a VC and say, hey, I'm going to give you a bunch of tokens. And, part of what you're going to do for me as a project is you're just going to pay everybody, and we're going to ICP this and just be live everywhere day one. That takes a lot of money to grease the doors, right? Now you can ask the question, do exchanges themselves, large ones, get some kind of cut? Probably. I mean, that's just reality. Probably they have some kind of allocation. A lot of the times when you see projects come out of nowhere, it's because the exchanges have some incentive to list them. I mean, even
they're invested in them.
Yeah, Terra Luna, who was the seed funders? It was, big exchanges, right?
Finance, yeah.
And so instantly they get market access, even though the product may or may not be a good idea. And I guess time kind of showed the design there where it wasn't.
We all know the history there.
Yeah, but it's very hard to, like Ergo, we started basically, in kind of the boondocks of exchanges, real tiny ones. And we've slowly been kind of making that crawl. And, would it be nice if exchanges were like, hey, wow, you have a nice decentralized ecosystem, you have good technology. That would be great. But the reality is that's just not how they think. They think, okay, I make some money for integration. I sit in the middle and collect fees based on trading, and with withdrawals, usually they have some kind of a cut too. And so what they want is whatever is hot and sexy in the moment, or who can pay the most.
Yeah, it's an interesting point because it's like a catch-22. You need the centralized exchange in one hand to be able to trade, and then on the other, you don't sort of want that as well. But I think to the point as well on how to protect people is basically education as well and self-custody. If everything's on chain in an exchange wallet, it's obviously there's age-old saying, not your keys, not your coins. The custody is then in the hands of the exchange. One downside to everyone having self-custody is no liquidity on exchanges for people buying and selling. So you'll see larger price movements on larger buys and sells and things like that as well. But it's a funny balancing act.
No, it is. And then you also have the responsibility of the user. Like it's easy to keep your money on exchanges because they keep your keys for you.
Yep.
And as soon as you go self-sovereign in terms of custody, you now have like the sacred responsibility of keeping your keys and protecting them. And I cannot tell you how many times I go into the help channel and they say, help, I lost my keys.
Yeah, recently when Terminus, the beta testing version of the app expired.
Test flight, yep.
Yeah, the test flight expired, and a bunch of users lost access to their wallets because they didn't save their seed phrases, and it's a real shame. It's a hard way to learn that lesson, but yeah, I mean, it is what it is, I guess. You gotta have custody of your wallet.
He brought it up online for a little bit. He pushed a minor update to activate it for a little bit. But yeah,
I
guarantee in a couple months, some people are going to look at their wallet and be like, "Oh shit, where'd it go?" Because they just missed that second test flight push.
Well, we even have people show up from Coinbarn, and that was from 2019.
That'll be nice to find when the price is at X amount or whatever it is. Yeah.
Some miner is going to be pretty happy with that.
So you guys are talking about exchanges and these behaviors that they're doing, but admittedly we have to remember that these guys are doing this for a reason. And the reason is, I'm sitting here, I have my bot that watches all the tokens, the miner tokens for Ergo and that kind of thing. And for the past couple weeks and months, or the past month, I'm seeing the freaking Dana token spike every once in a while. I'm like, what the hell's going on? Why, people are doing this kind of thing? And they're doing it, and the exchanges are doing what they're doing because there are people that are going to pump money and do that. So how do we get out of that cycle? I mean, I don't know if there is a way out.
It's hard. Like the exchanges have a monopoly basically on ramping, right? Where in order to move from, let's say, the fiat world into the crypto world, you need some kind of ramping mechanism. And usually what they do is they cover some aspect of liability, right? And it's become kind of the easy, convenient solution. Like an example, if I were going to have an exchange come to me and they say, hey, Arminio, I want you to pay us to list ERC on our exchange. My first question is, what are your payment rails, right? Because if you only have like debit card payment rails, you're the same as every other exchange, right? Versus Kraken or Coinbase, what do they have? They have the ability to wire money directly from, your bank account. But they also have a certain, a compliance that then they have to go through in order to do that. And so aside from, I meet Noah and, I don't know, write him a check or withdraw some cash or something, and he gives me some ERG, there's a ramping problem in our industry. And unfortunately, like Kraken's a good example. I do think that's probably one of the best exchanges because they don't have a smart chain. Like they just do kind of the conservative service side of being the middleman and handling that liability, versus a lot of other businesses have started to get creative, where they have on one hand their highly leveraged products, and then they have their smart chain, and then they have their lab research VC arm, and then they have their smart chain that's not so smart because you can't really act as a validator. And they've kind of expanded to where, to some degree, they compete directly with the let's say more decentralized projects who supposedly they're going to be the middleman for.
Any layer one project that's in direct competition with, really.
QX, I was going to add, as far as the fiat ramping issue, something I've had Bisq running on my computer for the last few weeks, just waiting for any interested takers. Go buy some ERG on Bisq. But they have lots of options for P2P payments. That, you could buy like an Amazon gift card and use that, or like cash by mail. That's a little sketchy. You don't know these people, but you put up some Bitcoin for collateral and you can even do face-to-face on here. That's very sketchy. But the point is, there's lots of options for fiat on ramping in a sort of P2P framework where you're not dependent on a centralized exchange. So I've been getting very interested in BISC. I've been shilling it on here week after week, and I hope so far it's been like there's been 3 of us that have offers for sale, and I don't know if there's been any real volume, but it's good to have some liquidity there, and kind of akin to the Trade Ogre exchange. That is a centralized exchange, but it's sort of in the same spirit of like OG, no KYC, no frills, just a good service offering exchange for your crypto.
Yeah, they do a good job at just having that one service. Yeah. Right. Because it's one of these things where if we take a look at the whole Alameda situation, at one hand you had an exchange, and then you had kind of a market maker / market actor, Alameda, and then you had Solana, which kind of acted as a proxy for like the VC side investment that usually, had all of these actors in the same basket. And that in and of itself, there's no concept of like a Chinese wall in crypto markets. And, it would be unnecessary if you kind of did the Kraken style or Trade Ogre style of just here's the exchange and, we're going to sit back and take a minor fee as people trade. But when you actually become a market competitor, it would be kind of like NASDAQ, becoming a active trading firm and also being the market maker and also, owning the infrastructure of the NASDAQ. And it's like, how do people not see that like the vector of attack there is just too easy? It's too easy.
We saw on it was Solana as well, like the inflated TVL numbers. It was I think it was at the peak it was 70-80 billion or something like that, and it was just a couple of guys just pumping those numbers out of nowhere, and we saw all that sort of collapse. And it's crazy to think, like the word you used earlier, insanity. It just applies across the board here.
Solana is officially a lower market cap than Shiba Inu, so nature is
still a lot
healing.
higher than ERG. I mean, we can't talk that much shit. Unfortunately,
it's true. I remember when all the FTX stuff was going down, there's a whole bunch of stuff also happening with Solana and the Solana Foundation and like all sorts of sketchy shit with them stopping the chain to prevent validators and stakers from leaving. I don't really follow Solana, so I have no idea really what is going on there. But I was just curious, do any of you guys kind of have a sense of what's going on in Solana land these days?
Well, the bottom line is one thing that Solana did have was a good developer experience, right? Mm-hmm. We can look at some of the positives. Their idea was, okay, we're going to make this network that is incredibly fast. And, because it was incredibly fast, it wasn't so decentralized and it also wasn't so stable. But, there was a lot of developers that did like to play around in that ecosystem because they did have pretty good tooling. But then, it was kind of a proxy for FTX. Right. And I wish that was an isolated incident. Binance has the, Ethereum fork that they kind of threw up real quick. And, there's a lot of exchanges that have their own exchange token and their own smart chain and their own ability to act as the market maker, the VC, the business developer. Basically they have an entire team in-house that really, in my opinion, is just sketchy. There's no separation of powers between, okay, here's Bitcoin or Ergo, where you have this whole decentralized network and it's supposed to be just a place to trade. And, versus if I, set up a wide variety of products and I bring users in, how often do you see these type of promotions where you're like, oh, you can trade on, my smart chain and we'll give you some kind of bonus or some kind of airdrop or some kind of whatever. And, they kind of try to milk in the new users into their ecosystem, which is not decentralized.
Yeah, it just goes back to the fact of the whole speculative market and how this cycle, it's particular in regards to sort of that whole speculation side of things and people just chasing the pumps and all that sort of stuff. And we touched on it a couple of weeks ago, people just changing that mindset and start, like the Bitcoin community does this really well, and they think and talk in sats. If we can sort of start changing that mindset and having that sort of discussion now in nanoerg and sats and everything like that, not just converting pump X to dollars and go and live a nice life.
Yeah. Like, I guess.
QX,
go for it.
No. I was just going to ask QX, how you, because I don't remember you being in Ergo community for, I don't know, it's more recent, right? Like, how did you find your way to the Ergo community? And I'm just curious, like, were you in the crypto world prior to Ergo, or like how did you? What's your story? Your crypto story?
Yeah, so I got lucky on some stocks with GME and Citius Pharmaceuticals and a couple of those, and by that time I was like, screw stocks, I can't stand this anymore. So I cashed out and moved right into Cardano, actually. So I was a bit of a Cardano purist for a little bit before I realized that putting Cardano at number one meant Cardano would be like $31 at the time per token, and it didn't really mix with my my pathway for individual wealth accounting for the rest of my life as far as that goes. So I wanted to better my investment. So that's what really led me to Ergo in the first place, honestly. It was that the potential for Ergo coin, right? We call it a coin. Tokens are the sub things. Mm-hmm. The potential of the Ergo coin, the ERG, to meet that realization of a lot of getting in early and going from there. And it wasn't just that,
because you've become such a diehard community member. You don't strike me as a speculator.
No. So that was a lot of it at first, and a lot of it too was that every once in a while I'd hear Charles do that mention that Ergo is this amazing thing that's kicking around here. And when I first looked at it, it was like it was on one of its spikes of $10 or $11 or maybe even 18 at the time, and I was like, oh, screw this, that's insane. But once I came in and started participating and realizing the potential of the ecosystem and what it meant to be part of it, that whole kind of thing changes a bit. Your ethos changes. And not to say that I'm still not interested in in making the best out of my investment as far as that goes, but right now it's a lot about furthering the community, furthering the ecosystem, and going from there. It's really changed, I'd say. So yeah, and I think you might see that with a lot of people coming in. You might see that they'll go to CoinMarketCap. No, what is it? The Coin Perspective was a big one. You go to the Coin Perspective, you type in ERG, you type in Cardano, you type in other things, and you see where they raise in the market cap, and you'll get a lot of people, I think, coming in that way. But I think that with the community that we have and that we're building and continue to build, you're going to change a lot of people's mind like you changed my mind. And you're going to have people come in for that potentially, but stay for what it means to be part of the ecosystem and part of the community, honestly.
How do you hear that?
Yeah, I always say it's Ergo has this certain gravitational pull. And it kind of, once you start exploring the ecosystem a little and start getting involved in the community and things, it just slowly just drags you in. And then before you know it, you, like yourself, you sort of, like you just mentioned, become an avid community member. And look what you're doing. You're driving, for those who don't know, QX is one of the Sigma knots, and he's driving one of the drivers of the Sigma program now. He's doing a lot of things in regards to voting and discussions and setting up the treasury, social channels, and working on mission states and all kinds of things. And so, yeah, very well, good contribution there, mate.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. I feel like there's kind of two people or two kinds of people. There's one kind of person that gets really drawn in, like all of us here, I would guess. And then there's another kind of person that, well, just to expound on that, just because I think the lack of bullshit in our community is really appealing. It's really appealing for a lot of people, and there's so much bullshit in this industry, and even if you're coming in, like I came in just as an investor, and yeah, when you start to see what people are actually trying to build, the real use cases, little bits of information come in at a time, like you start to understand how our current financial system works, how fucked it is, and how much more fucked it could be if certain technologies sort of come to fruition. It really lights a fire in a certain kind of person, I think, to try and work toward a greater good. And then I think there's going to be people that are like, nah, this isn't going to pump my bags. Maybe in 2 years I'll be back. And that's fine. Those kinds of people, I would rather have honest participants that aren't interested than people that kind of like hang around and hope for a bag pump.
And I think we're always going to have that. No, we're going to. I mean, if you look at the history of the stock market and how long we've been doing that with stocks, that's still present. So I mean, we're fairly young in the crypto market. We can't expect the whole mindset of people to change it if it's been going that way since the beginning of the stock market, as far as that goes. So we're going to run into that all the time. And to further that, what you were saying earlier is, once you come in and you're in that mindset, like a lot of us are, there's a feedback loop as far as that goes, but a positive one, I think, where just the other day, CW and I were interviewing MG Pi, and here's this young guy sitting here in his college dorm making crap in his spare time, and every time he makes something, he sets it out there for free. Even in the interview saying, I just want to give it to people and have them use it. And when you meet and talk to people like that are creating, it just makes me want to push harder and drive further and faster and help support that kind of thing and help support that platform. So yeah, that kind of stuff's really, really insightful and inspiring to see.
He's an underrated developer, I think. A lot of the stuff that he does kind of flies under the radar, but he's contributed a lot to the ecosystem. And
it was funny.
Big respect to him.
I got asked today on Twitter. I don't know actually MG Pi's like handle on Twitter if he's even there, but like, oh, who would you follow in the ecosystem? And it's like cheese enthusiast. How many followers does he have? Like 200.
Yeah.
How many do we have? Like 110. I think
the guys.
I think Cheese was the most popular guy of the ones that I dropped. Crassifus, how many does he have? Not too many, unfortunately. And they do amazing work, and they do it the right way, which is even better.
Yeah, these are the guys who are sort of hardcore coders and just want to build cool shit. They're not the sort of out here for notoriety or anything like that. They're very, very humble, and like QX was mentioning, or even Joe yourself, all those names you just mentioned, big advocates there for open source as well. Everything they sort of build and things like that, they put it out to community, and it's all out there. So it's fantastic.
And one of the cool things that Pi said as well was that, he came from EVM, Ethereum. Yeah. And he said he's sitting there trying to code something, competing against a team of 15 that are funded by VCs. And he's like, the hell am I going to do, to compete against these guys? So he said he came to Ergo just for that, so he could really make an impact and make a difference. I mean, those are the kind of people we're attracting, which is, I think, the lasting effect as far as that goes.
I'll keep beating the open source drum. It's not popular, right? It's not popular at all. It's much more popular to say, hey, you can.
It's scary. It's really scary.
You can build something proprietary, and you'll have a market advantage, and you can keep that market advantage as long as somebody else doesn't build a competing product. And in the meantime, you can do some research and development on the side, and hopefully you roll out a new version and you keep that proprietary advantage. But yeah, if I look at this as like public infrastructure, which is my ideal in terms of like a network, it's permissionless, it's public, it's transparent. With the right tools, you have the ability to actually understand your assumptions and have clear risk and have clear exits when things go bad. You can't do that without things being transparent. You just can't.
And I think that brings me to one of the things I wanted to mention earlier, that I really think, I don't think we're ever going to get rid of these kind of things where we're going to see corruption and those kind of things. While the at least the U.S. regulators will crank down and European ones will crank down on those kind of things, it's still going to happen. But I think one of the good things about Ergo is that I think it's going to succeed out of necessity. That the world needs a product like this. It needs an ecosystem. It needs an environment like this that is true, that is open, that is transparent. And honestly, that's my belief, that we're going to succeed because it's a necessity. It has to be done, and these fly-by-night things that come along, they're going to come, they're going to be bigger than Ergo, and they're going to peak and come back down, and Ergo is going to continue to slowly gain market share, continue to go up. Just my wish, my hopium as far as that goes. But
something as far as the open source situation, I was sort of reflecting back on old forum posts and like trawling through way back, like early Discord, and it's so interesting to see all the different names, some that I've forgotten about that I remembered, like different community participants that have come and gone, and maybe they'll be back one day. But in an open source ecosystem, it doesn't matter that they're gone now. If what they contributed was open, it still has a lasting impact. And there's so much that's been developed by people that have, they've got busy lives, they've had to move on. But what they added to the developer experience has been really significant. And I don't think that can be understated. Whereas if you have a community where everyone's building sort of private siloed things, if that project dies, then that knowledge and that sort of mind share dies with the project. So I think it's really valuable and one of the strongest aspects of our community.
Yeah,
Definitely.
and Ergo has the ability to just continue to stand on the shoulders of giants. Essentially, you have these people, as you said, Noah, that have built up not just devs, but when I first came out as a SIG, the infrastructure that was already there in place for SIGs, the documentation that was already there, the wealth of all that kind of stuff was already there for us to sort through and organize and continue to build on. And that's just how everything, I feel, is in Ergo. Everything's there, everything's open for people to grab, take, make better. And well, you'll run into, of course, people that get a little bent out of shape and you get egos in the way. And I know Joe says that he's not a drama person, but that's exactly what drama people say. I've dated enough girls in college and high school to know that, Joe.
I'm a watcher in that sense.
What's that meme where it's like, I hate drama. Meanwhile, you're like over behind the fence.
In the corner watching.
Yeah. That's exactly it.
So Ergo really, it's the only place I've been to, and I've been to several chains before this, that makes me feel that way. That makes me feel like I can gather what I need to do and take a step higher than what it was before. And at the same time, I'm not thinking that I'm better than whoever I came before, because it's that whole thing of perspective. When you're looking at a project at a certain level and you're working on it, you have a mindset of a perspective and a goal. And once you achieve that goal, either you continue on or you go to the next thing, and somebody comes along, sees a vision beyond that, and continues a stepping stone. That's Ergo for me. That's how it works, and I think that's how it's going to succeed.
Well, that's how open source development should work, in my opinion.
I do think there is a pitfall that can happen that I've seen where people will start on an idea and then they get really excited for their next idea, and then they get really excited for their next idea, and then you end up with 6 unfinished ideas that have no front end, or you either got the contracts written but nothing else. And that's still valuable, but it'd be great.
But being
if we
open
could finish
source,
some
anyone can walk in
ideas.
and pick that up and run with it. That's the fantastic thing.
Yeah.
No, I think if we build systems the right way, we can just outcompete. Because, like an example, what would the traditional financial system look like if you could audit a company in real time? Any company that's listed on a public infrastructure, you could audit their books and see their flows in real time. I imagine the stock market would blow up tomorrow. There would be tremendous issues. We're going to get a CPI number from the government, here pretty quick. Why can't we audit that, in real time? Why doesn't that mechanism exist? Like the level of transparency and how it could change things in a way that changed the trust assumptions that we have in investments, like long term. Okay, we're definitely not there yet today, but if we could develop systems that basically eliminated that type of trust, and gave that type of visibility to everybody, it could change the world. And that it's just more fair.
Yeah. In numerous sort of aspects of the industry as well, like you've just mentioned there, but it can be applied to voting and supply chains and identification and what you sort of want to let out. And like there's numerous sort of benefits to these systems as we know. But yeah, it's all about sort of eliminating or reducing that trust level where you're not reliant on sort of these big central entities and taking their word for things.
Yeah, I was reading an article the other day, Credit Suisse, what is their balance? What is their position? How are they doing? I'm thinking, if they were on chain, everyone would know. Always.
Yeah, then you can't speculate.
Yeah, you can't hide.
Yeah. Then you can't have big whales manipulating people's emotions.
Yeah, but then you could have like something like an Explorer, like Glassnode or Azurus or something like that, where it's just monitoring everything that's sort of happening. You'll see people will figure out which address is sort of linked to which entity and all that sort of stuff. So they'll monitor who's doing what. And there's some smart cookies out there. But everything being on chain there, you'd know what the liabilities are in real time, because everything's open and transparent on chain and auditable.
My wet dream here, as far as that goes, is to have that with the government funding, to have your tax dollars just be immediately tracked to everything.
Oh God, that's a black box that it would be nice to crack, because the Pentagon's failed how many audits in the last decade?
5, I believe.
Sorry guys, we lost $1 trillion. It's like that's a lot more than Sam lost. What's the story there?
Yeah, I saw some infographic, and I don't want to get political about anything about this, but I saw that the U.S. has spent something like $70 billion on support to Ukraine. And politics aside, that's just an obscene amount of money, and who knows where that's actually going.
Aside from any political thing, where did it go? But you could ask that really for any type of government.
Any government spending.
Like, where did it go? And what was the deliverable in terms of, sorry, we underbid it to get the initial contract, and now we're going to delay it 10 years and come back to you and raise the price X amount of times, but you have to finish because you married us, way back there. So
yeah, in my city, there's so much spending on committees of committees, and then we have a big, huge homeless issue here, and so you make a committee, and then you have people vote on the committee, and then the committee does nothing for a year and a half, and then they need more money, and then there's just so much wasted resources when people can't see what's going on.
Especially on that sort of charity side of things as well, where sort of each step where that money sort of transfers, people take their little cut, and then the people who actually benefit from the most are the ones who sort of get the least amount out of it. But
you get pocket change by the end.
Yeah, and that's just another use case.
These things are, again, trying not to get political, but these kind of committees and those kind of things where you have fairly wealthy people trying to make decisions for less wealthy people. You can always call it out pretty easily with that acronym NIMBY. You guys familiar with NIMBY?
Yes.
Not in my backyard. Don't put section out housing outside of my development where I have those unsightly apartments and that kind of thing. It's you really see the true character of how somebody wants to help when it involves encroaching on their wealth and their territory and that kind of thing. So I really see those committees. Well, we're getting political shit. I'm going to stop. Let's keep moving on.
I think it's good that, it is public money. Why don't we know? If it's public money, why don't we know, right? If it's public, open source it.
Yep. Yeah. Exactly. And then instead of just getting some little budget flyer that's 800 pages long and no one's going to flick through it, and there's a couple of pie charts in there and things like that at the end of each year, just to be able to sort of know what sort of is happening. Everything just gets buried in bureaucracy. Joe, you mentioned earlier about Tether and sort of the risks out of there and what's backing Tether and all that sort of stuff. And the last time I heard, there's always been speculation in regards to sort of the monetary sort of value that's backing Tether and whether there's anything there of value and whether it's just paper money or US bonds or treasury stocks and things like that. I believe the last time they got rid of all their paper trading or their paper money in that respect. I'm not too sure what their sort of situation is. Have you heard anything like that?
I don't know. No, as a business, that's something that's interesting to look at. Like, how do you structure something like that well on the back end? Because, okay, you definitely want treasury bonds because you have liquidity, right? And you have some mechanism of yield. That way you're not just holding cash and like swapping one for one, right? There's no real profit incentive there. And then the question is, okay, well, let's say you do have exposure to T-bonds, right? Well, what's, your risk? Because, they do fluctuate in price, right? Yep. And then what's the amount of liquidity that you need on hand in order to cover that? So, they basically have some, portfolio that has to cover basically, people that are willing to swap Tether to USD, so they have to have enough liquidity to cover that. And then with the rest of their reserves, I imagine they're looking for some type of return. Now, what is that return? Is it commercial paper? Is it, government paper? We don't know, right? We honestly do not know. Like we've seen, I think there's been like one pie chart that came out that, was like a single page pie chart that really said nothing in terms of asset allocation other than, like who knows what it actually meant. It was so generalized. There's no idea. Plus, if you're managing something like that, you have to float based on liquidity flows, right? Not just, in and out of USD, but, as well as if you have some, yield mechanism built into your treasury, you're going to have some kind of float based on market sentiment and movements. Are bonds going up today? Are they going down today? What's the yield? So you have a lot of moving parts there that we've seen one pie chart about.
I remember that. Was it released? I think it was late last year or maybe early this year. Can't remember the exact timing of it, but it was basically along those lines where there's a pie chart, a few words, and essentially just saying, "Trust me, bro, we've got the cash as the backing."
Yeah. That's scary because that is something that has been used as a, a kind of a reserve aspect of crypto markets as a whole.
Yeah, and it's pretty astonishing. Like if you step back and look at crypto markets, like USDT props up everything.
Mhm.
Like pretty much all liquidity is centered around USDT, and you know, it's just like a never-ending stream of liquidity. Like I don't know, it's I was playing around with Indigo protocol on Cardano, and you know, you over collateralize a
Mhm.
synthetic IUSD with ADA, and you know, something like that is by design going to be capitally inefficient because you're putting more collateral
Mhm.
into it than you're getting back, unless you're doing like leverage and things like that. But yeah, with something like USDT, you don't have those capital inefficiencies, but you also don't know what the fuck is going on. So it's
It's
like
insane. It's insane to have a
it's
black box
terrifying.
that just governs so many aspects of our industry, and your trust assumptions are basically trust the pie chart from a couple years ago.
Yeah, I mean, if USDT, I can't say that fucking word. USDT. If USDT goes down, it's gonna be brutal. You know, like
Yeah.
it has its fingers in everything.
Well, think about all the coins and tokens throughout the industry and what has a trading pair with USDT.
Yeah,
I'd
it's
say
always one of the first.
99%. Yeah.
Bitcoin and USDT, those are the two.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then what's their market cap or something at the moment? It's 60, 70 billion or something for USDT. So having that backed off chain, yeah, it's quite the sum of money.
I mean, I know TVLs, can be bogus, but they're still doing 25 billion in TVL every 24 hours right now, and a bear. I mean, that's crazy.
In
It's crazy.
trading volume, yeah.
It's crazy just the amount of depth there, and then in terms of what like the back end looks like, we don't know. And anybody that's like, oh, how dare you FUD that? We should know. That's the whole point of having blockchains to some degree, is with public infrastructure you get a certain transparency and auditability, and you can look at where the coin was mined and how it passed through the ecosystem. It's a keychain, basically a keychain of custody. We should be able to push for that if that's the whole premise of these systems, but that's a very, very unpopular and spicy thing to say.
I remember actually, Noah, just going along the lines there, you mentioned like if USDT goes down, then the shit will hit the fan. I remember saying in the trading chat when I was probably one of the first times when I actually joined Ergo, and it was basically along the lines of if USDT goes down, do whatever you can to kick every man and dog and everything like that to be able to jump off the ship as fast as you can, because yeah, the implications industry wide would be huge.
Yeah, a lot of people I think would actually try to move into crypto assets. My personal theory in terms of how that would all break down is they would not want to hold USDT, so then there would be a mad
Bitcoin,
rush.
probably, right?
Yeah, to
Straight
buy
BTC.
Bitcoin or whatever has liquidity that hasn't like completely hyperinflated. The people would try to move into.
Yeah.
But then we get into this idea of a decentralized store of value, and that's somewhat stable. That's a really hard thing to create. Right now, okay, we have SIG USD. Has it been stable? Yes. Is it a perfect protocol? In my opinion, no. But it does its job as it was designed to be stable. But then you still have dollar exposure, right? And what's happening, to the dollar, over time, it's kind of losing purchasing power, right? Now, maybe if they raise interest rates and destroy enough capital, we might see a slight change in that at some point. But, the trend has been it's losing value over time. So why would we want to be pegged to that? And then you have to ask the question, okay, can we get like a basket of commodities that, offset each other's risk and get some, complex product that you would actually be able to buy the same amount of resources, like a year from now or a decade from now or 2 decades from now? And then how would you collateralize that? That's very hard nut to crack. It's a complicated problem, but it is a interesting thought experiment.
Enter Dexy.
Yeah, that's Dexy's like the first instance of that, where it's more resource, let's say stablecoin.
Yeah, for those who don't know, that's going to be pegged to gold, the price of gold instead of USD.
And
guys, I mean, all it takes really. Am I go? You go? Who goes?
You go.
I'll go. With these kind of things, it really feels like an uphill battle here for these kind of adoptions and these integrations. But from experience, in at least the tech world, and listening to lectures from some professors at the university I'm at, some very well-known ones, these kind of tech hurdles just happen and they burst. And once that bursts, it's done, and the floodgates come crashing. I mean, look at this just from last week, and how much Chat GPT has blown normies' minds. People coming on Twitter and YouTube saying, "Oh my gosh, here's what it did for me. Here's what it can do for the future. You guys are all out of your jobs." And how fast that changes, because when a technology changes and that bubble bursts, you're not discovering new things beyond that initial burst. That burst was essentially the roadblock. And once it bursts, you apply everything you've learned beforehand to that new pathway, and you exponentially increase your pathway there way more than you'd think you would, as far as that goes. So I think you're going to see with things like Chat GPT or adoption of crypto, once that little thing bursts there, things are going to pile on, things are going to go fast. But it's a hard uphill battle until you get that burst. You don't know when that burst is going to happen necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it goes, started beating that drum again in regards to the open source side of things. You see people sort of just continuing to build all this sort of developer tooling and things like that. And ultimately that bubble will be burst at some point as well. And the floodgates will open, and developers will have all the tools and examples and tutorials and education they need to be able to sort of run with everything they want to do. So, in regards to the sort of the tech side of things and adoption and everything like that, I think crypto, the industry as a whole, and what we're fighting for and things like that, trying to overthrow the current monetary systems and all kinds of things, the financial system, everything like that. Think about how deep those fingers and roots are into sort of society and everything like that. And it'll be hard to sort of overturn and change people's perceptions. But once it does, it'll be sort of pretty quick, like you did mention.
Yeah, I hope so.
I think, and you guys have preached this a lot. I mean, all it takes is one little D-app that just pokes a little hole in that ceiling, and then shit just starts flooding in. Could be something stupid, could be something silly that just makes a utility for other chains to jump onto and utilize. And once that happens, man, I'm glad we're having a good framework to build up to, and to have a good foundation so that we can support that kind of thing.
Maybe it'll be the Comet lottery.
You never know.
You know what? They did something. There's how many dog coins exist in the crypto space? Of the 20,000 whatever cryptos that are at least on like Coin Market Cap, how many dog coins are there? And they actually built something, and they built something open source.
Yeah,
so
that was MGPI, I think.
Yeah, even if they're a self-admitted shitcoin, I have to tip my hat to that. They built something, and they built it the right way.
Yep. I've still got one of their stupid dog NFTs, and I'll own that thing proudly till the end of my days.
The jelly bean dogs.
I was actually having a DM with Coltier. How do you even know how you say that name? Coltier? Is that how you say it?
Close enough.
That's how I pronounce it.
The other day, and we were talking about, I forget what we were bitching about something. I'm sure it was an off-chain bitch about a rant that was going on in the middle of the chat. But I said to him, you guys are at a huge advantage in that you've got fuck all nothing to lose. You can do whatever you want, and your pathway, your direction is anywhere. Mm-hmm. So, where all these other places come in and projects come in, they have to promise something and they have to deliver on something. Comet has that flexibility where they can do fuck all. And you got Joe Armenio saying, this is a fucking great thing, kind of thing. So, I mean, that's the beauty of Comet. They can take these risks and really, really shine with those kind of things.
They built open source, right? Like I didn't know whether they would deliver something initially. I was like, okay, good luck. And they did it. So I have to say, props to that.
Yeah, initially, what was it, the fork of Nautilus?
Yeah,
they were saying they were going to upkeep that and everything.
The reskin.
Yeah. But yeah, obviously they've closed that, and that's all sort of on the wayside now. But yeah, that NFT sort of side of things, it does bring a little bit of sort of degeneracy into it with the lottery sort of side. If you hold NFTs and tokens and blah 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 blah, you can get rewards and burn tokens and all kinds of stuff. So it brings fun and excitement, and users actually utilizing ERG or the ERG chain and then Comet as well. So it's exciting, even if it's just a meme coin. It all has its place.
I think I'm tuned to lose 2 ERG in about a day, right? Is that when the first lottery ends? Did you guys buy a ticket?
In?
Oh yeah, I bought it.
I've already gotten wrecked on the NFT, so I'm gonna see how the first lottery goes, and then maybe I'll make a decision. Then.
I even go for it.
I was gonna say I'll have minimal exposure just to support that because they delivered something and it was open source. I have to.
I even went to Spectrum and pumped down 2 ERG for 200,000 Comet.
There you go.
So you're the one who made it spike.
Yeah.
All right, gentlemen. I'm going to have to call it quits. As fun as this has been, we're coming up to time for this week. Is there any last words we want to have in regards to anything we've discussed today?
I'll just say it's good to have QX on here, and it'd be cool to get more new community members on, talk some shit, and just hang out, see who else we can get on here.
I agree. I would like to see the HashItOut thing grow. Don't be shy.
Yeah, this is a lot of fun. This is always my favorite show to watch in the bathtub with rose petals. As I said in chat. So we'll watch this one when it comes out as well.
Maybe next week you can be on the show in the bathtub with the rose petals.
Yeah.
Perfect.
No, just sort of reiterating that as well. The door's always open. We're always trying to invite people to come on to hash it out, and we've actually managed to coax QX on this week. If anyone wants to jump on, by all means, reach out. Send any of us a DM, and we can kind of get in contact and set up a time. We normally do it on Wednesdays. What time is it Eastern? I'm not too sure on the US time, but it's
midnight Eastern, 5 UTC.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you very much for that. Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure chatting once again this week. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Have a good one.